Hello and a warm welcome to a very special podcast. I'm your host, Gaurav Choudhury. This podcast will deep dive into how digital public infrastructure, or DPI, is transforming our lives through the use of generative AI, democratizing access to tech, and also breaking linguistic barriers to transact virtually. In a diversified and multilingual country like India, technology is playing a critical role in digital transformation and helping public service delivery at scale. The government, too, has been relying on customized technology to provide citizen centric governance, and its impact is palpable over the past 10 years. There has been an emergence of a new work culture which makes optimum use of the latest technology, including artificial intelligence or AI, to curb corruption, increase transparency, and promptly address grievances. For instance, the indigenous India stack is revolutionizing our access to finance. Earlier, our vibrant local markets were filled with people buying and selling goods with well worn banknotes. Today, those people are using smartphones linked to United Payments Interface (UPI), an instant real time payment system developed by the National Payments Corporation of India, or NPCI, to facilitate interbank transactions through smartphones. Such technological advances have transformed our digital finance landscape. Now, millions of us in the vast formal and the very vast informal economy can accept payments, settle invoices, and transfer funds anywhere in the country with just a few taps of a smartphone screens. 2 years ago, India Stack found a natural ally in Bhashini, a shorthand for AI for national integration. In July 2022, Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched Bhashini under the National Language Technology Mission. Bhashini aims to transcend language barriers, which was a deterrent to pan-India penetration of digital finance. The mobile app ensures that every Indian can effortlessly access digital services in their own language and tap into other government-run initiatives such as Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission and Open Network for Digital Commerce, or ONDC, as it has come to be known very popularly now. Bhashini uses voices as a medium to bridge the language and digital divide. It offers technology translation services in 22 scheduled Indian languages. To discuss the emerging trends of how India's DPI ecosystem is breaking linguistic barriers at home while harboring its global ambitions, we have with us an esteemed panel of Mr. Amitabh Nag, CEO Bhashini, and Aditya Sudhindranath, partner Deloitte India. Welcome, gentlemen, to this very special podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can start with you, Mr. Nag, the indigenously developed UPI has brought about a momentous transformation in India's payments landscape. And the change is not just limited to technology. It's, of course, a rapid, massive technological change. It's also regulatory. It's also financial. The extent and the sweep of this change has had no parallel in history anywhere in the world. The edifice of this change is infrastructure, which is what we call as the DPI, or the digital public infrastructure, which essentially serves as a superstructure through which welfare schemes, services, payments, and products are delivered seamlessly and, of course, in real time. The strength of this is that the scheme is interoperable, it has an open architecture ecosystem, and is not just limited to the payments landscape. We now have the ONDC. It's an open interoperable e-commerce platform, and we also have the NDHM for health records, and we have OCEN for credit. Mr. Nag, help us understand DPI's impact from a citizen's ease point of view. Mr. Nag?
Yeah, digital public infrastructure, or DPI, as you just mentioned, has got a profound impact on citizens' life and the way they are actually executing or working, or trying to do any of the activities. And UPI, as an example, you are having a change in the behavior of the people. How many people today actually carry cash? If you actually look at it, how many people would try to create a bank balance and then try to work upon it, or use credit card even when you're looking at UPI? So Aadhaar brought about yet another change, which was very evident when you were going across to a mobile phone operator wanting to get another mobile connection. You were trying to search for your credentials. Today it is online authenticated and you are getting a new phone connection. Similarly, if you look at the DigiYatra portfolio, that is, revolutionizing the way you access airport and the airport services. You are perhaps inside the airport and crossing the complete security pipeline, excepting when there are rushes in the security checkup, about in 2 minutes, sometimes 3 minutes, which was earlier taking multiple
Right.
minutes to go by.
Right.
ONDC will actually bring in a similar kind of change if you actually look at it, from a perspective of democratizing the complete market and actually bringing in new sellers and buyers who are going to work and upload their products and buy and sell. So then you had the direct benefit transfer and Jandan account, which brought in a revolution of financial inclusion for the marginalized people who were not
Right.
having any bank accounts or they were not enjoying the financial systems.
Right.
And this, cascades into multiple activities.
Mm.
When you see the world living on economic, thread where many of the things are actually done by transacting through money. It changes the behavior of everybody in the entire transactions, and that's what we are seeing today.
That's right. A very good context on how it's changing lives and how things that were, earlier very difficult, not difficult, there were challenges in transaction and delivery of services now become extremely easy, almost at the click of a button. But Aditya, if I may bring you in here, UPI is not just Indian now. It's a globally acclaimed success story. It has set a template for the world to emulate, and UPI is rapidly expanding its global footprint. It is now present in France, in Singapore, and the UK, and of course Sri Lanka and neighboring countries, among others. And it's game changing to say the least. UPI is upending cross-border digital transactions landscape, and that is something that we are seeing it happen very, very rapidly. Are we looking at a future where paying overseas is going to be as simple as saying UPI please, as we say in India now? Aditya?
Thanks, Gaurav. I think the short answer is absolutely yes. But I'm going to explain this in two parts. The first part is why has it been so successful and scalable, which is going to have that leverage globally. And the second part, more focused on what are the things we need to take care of and we need to be cognizant when we start doing these multi-country transactions, right? Now, in the first part, I want to focus on three or four different aspects, right? So UPI has enabled cash to QR code, right? Who would have imagined this transaction behavior to be altered within less than a decade? That too in a widespread adoption of economic levels. That's
Right.
a big attribute that we have pushed forward, right? UPI is very universal. Street side shops to malls, physical shops to e-commerce website. It can handle mind-boggling volumes. Like right now, if you look at it, 15 approximately, I think 15 billion transactions a month, and which is equal to like about nearly 20 lakh crore rupees, right? That's the massive scale for our country. So that means it can handle any other country globally as well, right? It's also accessible and inclusive. Hello UPI, the voice command is a step in the right direction because it can bring in different, different people to actually use this and they can send, receive money, payables, right? And I think the government has done a remarkable effort in putting UPI on the map, right? Popularizing it and showcasing it at international events like, for example, the G20 summit, right? So, and on a lighter side, the success of this was at the Eiffel Tower accepting UPI payments right during Paris Olympics, and it still continues. You can still book an Eiffel Tower tour using UPI, and now many malls in France, which is known for shopping, is actually enabling it. Right. So overall, I feel UPI has been a flag bearer, right, and a true kind of a testimony for the impact and scale. Now, what does this mean for global, which is what you are asking as well, right? So, is from an operations perspective, the interoperability is extremely important. So it needs to integrate with the resident ecosystem, right? And that is a number of countries have their own different network systems which exist. So we need to find an operating rhythm there across the scale. Right, the regulatory environment has to be very structured. You did touch upon it in terms of cross-border mechanisms, including like let's say exchange rate management, AML, other risks to make sure that its safe network is safeguarded so that it's not exploited in it for a different way. Right, ability to underwrite. Right, from a we need the network which is absorbing this needs to have the financial muscle to underwrite risks and ensure that the overall network is viable and avoid any kind of a domino effect, right? And one of the key things is the revenue model, right? I think the ecosystem where it is adopted globally needs to have that revenue model generated for the whole ecosystem, because that's when you'll see a large scale adoption coming in, just like probably any other payment schemes there, right? And the last thing and the most important thing globally, which is really important, is the privacy angle, right? Because let's say in countries in Europe where you have GDPR, you have different PII perspectives coming in, because what UPI essentially maps your mobile number to your account, right? And also you have a UPI ID. So what parts will be available, what part to the user, and how can that be used? I think these are the things you need to kind of consider. But I just feel this is going to be viable. This is going to be extremely scalable. It's going to be a big success with many more countries adopting. And it's extremely heartening to see our government working to solve these challenges and aspects to staying committed to taking UPI global.
Absolutely. It is indeed a flag bearer and turning out to be one of India's biggest financial exports to the rest of the world. Mr. Nag, if I may bring you in, the UPI platform became operational 2016 and Bhashini was launched 2 years ago in 2022. If you can give us a sneak peek into the backstory, how this idea came about and how it was implemented and how it now seeks to bridge the language divide. Amitabh?
Yeah, Bhashini stands for Bhasha Interface for India. As they started about 2 years back, as you said, and at that point of time, we had artificial intelligence still in the labs. GPUs were still talk of the town, but still not out in the market. And hence, India thought early that the language divide has to be, transcended, and we need to bridge this out using AI, which was thought of. And we actually went across to tap all the research institutes or higher educational institutes in the country who had a footprint on artificial intelligence, speech technologies, language technologies, computational linguists, and we tapped about 70 of them. The 70 research institutes, which included IITs and IITs and some organizations like CDAC, AICSTEP, etc., etc., they were asked to form consortiums to sort out the five set of problems. The five problems were that the computer should be in a position to recognize what you speak. So, in that too in 22 languages, and in short, it is called automatic speech recognition. Then the computer, whatever is encoded in computer in a particular language, should be translatable to the other language, which was machine translation. So that again, it is 22 by 22 metrics. And then the computer, what is encoded in computer in 22 languages should be spoken out. So that's text to speech, as they call it. So it's a third problem which was there. And then we have printed a lot of material over a period of time, which is available as a resource for us. And but when you scan it, it actually gets scanned as a picture and not as a text. So recognizing that as a text was another problem, which is called optical character recognition, or OCR for short. And then we have a lot of names which are actually to be recognized as those names, like Amitabh has to be known Amitabh in all 22 languages. So that was another set of problem which was there. And so the 70 research institutes which we had have formed about 8 consortiums, and we divided these problems and gave these problems to the 8 consortiums which was formed. One more problem statement which was there was that out of the 22 languages, the digital footprint for all the 22 languages did not exist. That means we didn't have digital data to train the AI models, right? So what we went on to exercise as another project was to create the digital data. That means, the languages for which the digital data does not exist, we moved into the market to actually, have application on a mobile on which there was a picture which was there, and the relevant people were asked to speak or write or translate on that based on that mobile, and then the digital data was created. Given all of this, we reached a number of milestones, started reaching a number of milestones. We do text to text today in all 22 languages. We have automatic speech recognition, which is also there in all 22 languages. We do optical character recognition, which is on 13 languages. We do, the transliteration or the named entity recognition, which is again on 22 languages. And then we created this. When we have created this AI models, we wanted to render this to the public and the businesses. So we created a platform called National Hub for Language Technology, which aggregates all these models as APIs, which have a service ID, which can be used by applications and people to take it up and integrate into this application. We launched Bhashini app, which is available on Google App Store as well as Apple thing. So all of that actually created a situation by which uh, the latent need of people started coming out. And what was the latent need was that I wanted to communicate with people, to collaborate, and did not want to have a burden of another language. I wanted to study in my own language. But more importantly, the intent was demonstrated that I want to do the complete transaction during what I do during the day in my own language. And when they saw voice as a medium, the imagination moved forward to say that can I actually include the digitally challenged and literacy challenged people who are on the other side of digital divide as well as on the literacy divide. And that has brought about use cases which are quite different and quite uh, you know it's a user journey as well as personas which were not thought of before. So, obviously, I'll discuss that during the course of the day, but this is what has been the journey if I put it across in a nutshell, Gaurav. I hope
Absolutely.
I
Yeah,
covered
yeah.
everything.
Yeah. No, this was very, very interesting and insightful. Aditya, Deloitte has entered into a strategic partnership with Bhashini. How can this type Bhashini and Deloitte be a force multiplier for the country?
Right. See, Deloitte has been at the forefront of nation building, working with different central, state governments, public sector units for a long time now, and providing various different services of cross advise, implement, and now operate across multiple sectors: education, healthcare, economic planning, public goods delivery. Right. Now, with this partnership with Bhashini, we are united by the common vision to make India self-reliant and inclusive through and becoming like a cultural powerhouse. Right. Now, the question is, how are we going to disrupt the market together? If you look at it as Indians, we are extremely proud of our culture and language, and we celebrate diversity wholeheartedly. But if you look at practical challenges still exist across citizen experience, customer experience, where sometimes interactions could be a potential challenge on a large scale when you look at it right, across 1.4 billion. And Bhashini has come as a true blessing where we can solve together as Deloitte and Bhashini complex problems through this technology. Right? So let me take some examples. Now, if you look at public services delivery and like let's say citizen or customer experience, customer grievances, right? The main thing is how do you support like for example a migrant ecosystem. Now a worker can feel at home right away with if you have an application enabled by Bhashini. For example, if you look at IRCTC, it is already enabled Bhashini. You can book a train ticket in his or her own language and still kind of get that done if it's in English there in the front end, right? Or probably book a gas cylinder or maybe a ration from different PDSs, right? You look at even driving education in niche areas. Mr. Nag already touched upon it, but some research say that the average student uh, kind of teacher for secondary schools in India, right, is about anywhere between 25, 26 is to 1 against like probably a developed countries of 12 to 15 is to 1, right? Now, let's assume the Diksha app, which is a huge learning platform that we have developed, another DPI product, right, is tightened with Bhashini. It's going to be so much more impactful, right? And learning language will never ever be a barrier for anybody to learn, right? If you look at it even from an agriculture perspective, today farmers in remote areas can get their queries related to farming practices, addressing and interacting with, like, let's say, a tractor company or a dealership or services with their own language and conversion. It's going to facilitate things much more better, right? But now, if you move the needle to more like professional services, right? One of the unorganized sectors like microfinance, right, which caters to individuals, small businesses that don't have access to conventional banking, like probably the three of us, right? When they are armed with Bhashini, they can overcome the traditional language barriers, reach out to more people in the hinterlands, right? And customer servants, agents, right? They'll be kind of this voice translation that is enabled by Bhashini is going to really help in pushing credit growth, right? But if I have to put the vision out there, our strategic partnership is going to ensure that every Indian stakeholder across the breadth of a nation stays connected and language never becomes a barrier to communicate.
Absolutely. Language should never be a barrier. Mr. Nag, can you share any data or any highlight how a wider promotion of Indian language models has helped DPI's penetration across the country?
Yes, as I was discussing earlier, there were multiple things which we started working upon as the technology started getting popular. Uh, One of the use cases which we did with Ministry of Agriculture was to put up the Kisan E-Mitra, which was which was answering the farmers their queries on voice on their vernacular language. So what happens is that the PM Kisan Samman Nidhi, under the PM Kisan Samman Nidhi program, Prime Minister transfers money to the farmers in three installments, and if there is a challenge in getting the money which was transferred by the Prime Minister's this program, then the farmer can actually ask a query onto this chatbot and saying that mera bhugtan nahi hua, and he can get an answer why it did not happen, and then he can rectify it. Earlier, this particular information would have been difficult to get for the farmer and would have required a lot of legwork as such. Now, there are about 11 crore farmers, and imagine if 1% of them have a challenge. We have saved that productivity, that ease of working, etc., etc. The second use case which we worked upon, and I'm talking out of one of many, is with the Reserve Bank of India for their online credit program. The farmers get the loan based on the parcels they hold as land records, and these land records are actually at state data centers in their vernacular language. And Bhashini actually provided the transliteration mechanisms to access the land records and transliterate it in the language in the banks in which the banks understand. So theoretically, if all documents are correct and the checks and balances are in place, you can actually provide a loan to a farmer in about an hour or so. So that's the efficacy which has been brought in, at which was otherwise, taking months as well as some amount of investment from farmers. Then with the NPCI, we launched a thing called, voice-based payment, conversational payment. So you can say that, we had a persona of a migrant worker coming into a city and working for the day and wanting to transfer money to his parents back home. So he can dial a number. That means he does not need to be dependent on internet, and say that mummy ko paise transfer kar do and put in his pin, and the money would get transferred. So that's a ease of business which we have brought in. We launched it in two languages, English and Hindi. and now we are going for multiple languages. Now, railways, for example, was not connected to, a regional language people. If you are actually looking at Rail Madad or National Train Inquiry System, these were available on Hindi and English. We brought it to 13 languages right now, and we intend to serve more languages there. In the process, what we did was that we started creating Indic language databases. The train names as well as the station names were not there. All the 20,000 of these things were not there in any of the databases of language or GenAI or anything which was there. So we actually transliterated all of them and brought into a glossary into a database right now. And that has actually, now the railways is now connected truly, as far as grievance is concerned and train inquiry is concerned, to 30% more population, right, which is in regional language. Then we moved on to look at panchayats, for example. There is a e-gram swaraj package which is being used by the panchayats. Now imagine this software was in English till now. And panchayat, gram panchayats were working on the software and supposed to get reports there. Now we have now made it available on 22 languages, and in the process, we have actually brought in 2.7 lakh panchayats into the system digitally. Right? They were never digitized before, as far as open market is concerned in the open digital world. So these panchayats are now into the system, as well as the gram panchayats can access the system in 22 languages. Then we went on to law enforcement, and we were talking about talking to National Police Academy, and when we found that the investigation officer goes to a scene of crime and he wants to make notings, so he starts making notings, and he has to see also, he has to start making notings also. So he forget, he misses out certain things because of this, and then he comes back and tries to file a report which will take some time. Now, in what we did was to give him an application which was a transcription application, which transcribes what he speaks, so he can go to a crime scene and keep speaking what he sees, and it gets transcribed as a report for him. And when he comes back, he does minor correction and files the report. So, the information is not lost. Second is again with the productivity. Moving on to yet another use case was the fact that, when we work on the district court, these are on all regional languages. When we move to high courts, this is all on English or Hindi, and mostly perhaps English. We did a, POC, which we translated the case diary for the cases which are moving to the high court. So the complete productivity chain, which was having a lag because of this entire impact, has got changed. So what I described are few use cases on which we have worked, and these use cases, are multiplying every day. When we look at the tourism Kumbh Mela, there is a different aspect to it. You're looking at the helplines where the people are coming and talking at a different language. That has a different aspects to it. Plus, you're looking at transcribing what is being spoken. So there is the number of use cases which people have now come across are multiple and many. And we hopefully trying to see that we would be in position to service one of them. One important aspect, which of course people have realized, is that this is a technology which can only move in one direction. That means it will only improve, and the 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 improvement is based on data. And data is based on more usage. So the more the people usage, the more data they would generate, and the more feedback would be available, and that feedback and the original data can form the parallel corpus to train the model further. So a lot of help from the people who are using it coming up, so that we are able to make this technology more robust as the time goes by.
Absolutely. These use cases are so insightful and interesting because we generally don't realize that how language can actually break down barriers so significantly and enable not just ease of business, but also ease of living. Uh, Aditya, how does Deloitte's DPI playbook for nations apply to the Indian context? If you can just briefly give us a insight. Aditya.
Right. See, India has been a pioneer when it comes to DPIs. You look at, we've spoken about UPI, Aadhaar, ONDC, Diksha, Bhashini as well, right? And we have seen success across different domains, right? Citizen services, financial, e-commerce. Uh, but there is a scope on building on the space, right? And taking this experience, and as Mr. Nag said, different use cases to another level, right? And some of the areas that I believe in the playbook that's mentioned at the top of my mind could be, the trade and the supply chain. We have a lot of ports, bustling ports. If you have digital IDs, electronic registries, that's really going to help efficient custom clearances. It's going to shorten the supply chain life cycle, better visible supply chain. It's going to, it's going to reduce the entire counterfeit. It's going to manage the trade finance documentation better, and basically expediting the entire trade and reducing the disputes. Right. So I think this whole supply chain can be transformed. Uh, in black swan events, I think cross-border crisis planning, real-time information sharing through DPIs, right, resource allocation, it becomes far more resilient if you kind of use this DPI. And for me, I think the tourism and cross mobility is extremely important. If you look at DPI, can bring frictionless experience to travelers. We do have electronic signatures in passports to expedite customs, but imagine if you have a digital ID to facilitate efficient passport control, right? And if you look at medical tourism, which is really, really picking up in India and overseas as well in some parts, right? If you can do seamless data sharing, sharing medical histories, and collaborating between healthcare providers, digital health records, right? Obviously, keeping all the privacy and aspects in mind, right? That's going to be huge. And you've spoken about financial landscape earlier, but digital wallets can really simplify this cross-border transactions, right? So there is a huge scope for using and embedding DPI across. And even in our upcoming Ārohaṇa government summit that we're going to have this week, we are going to showcase, we're going to go a notch higher, and we're going to have DPI and AI together. That playbook will be launched, right? And what I wanted to end this by is Dr. Pramod Verma's a few words in his foreword in our DPI playbook said that we shouldn't consider this playbook as a mere guide, right? It's a roadmap that's really going to shape the future, where technology is an enabler to bridge the gap between the two Indians, and uplifts every Indian experience, so that no Indian, not even one Indian, is left behind in this digital revolution. And that's the critical aspect what we see for our nation.
Absolutely. You cited the instance of the use case for tourists, and nothing can be more visible than that. The kind of ease that this is going to bring about, and we have seen that happen. And the example of for the Eiffel Tower stands out as a testimony of the kind of ease that we can bring about globally for Indians. Amita, final question to you, uh, which has two parts, small parts. One is how has Bhashini emerged as a role model for Prime Minister Modi's slogan for inclusivity, "Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas," and secondly, how can Bhashini monetize its services in the near future? Amitav.
So, as you had also talked about in the beginning, Vashini actually transcends the language barrier through its basic services, which is basically speech recognition, translation, text to speech services, etc. But if you look at the complete portfolio, which is actually enabling machine to understand people through voice. So now machine can be made to work through voice in the regional languages, which is there, and machine can then come back and give a report or talk to the human being. So in some way, what you're trying to do by using speech as a medium, you are actually going to the you're not only bridging the language divide, you're bridging the digital divide, you're bridging the literacy divide. So, you are making the last mile inclusive from the perspective, because we still have 20 to 30% of the population who, for them, only way of expression or only way to actually connect is voice. They don't read, they don't write, right? So from that perspective, yes, we are going forward to actually bridge that divide, and bridge that divide also in that language in which they speak. So it's a classic case of state going to the citizen and trying to say, what do you require, and I'm here to serve you. And it is a true sense the inclusive society dream vision, which our honorable prime minister has dreamt of. So that's one. The second is that, see, when we are looking at these services, which are basically translation services, we are not even merely looking at translation, but we are now looking at transactions which can be performed using these voice-based services or translation services, both of them. Now, this will increase the productivity in some cases. This will reduce the expenses which a person used to incur for certain jobs. It will also be in a position to increase the sales. For example, in collaboration with ONDC, we had launched, seller onboarding, buyer onboarding, online negotiations, etc. So it will also increase the reach, thereby increasing the sales. And a percentage of that is actually what Bhashini should be targeting to sustain itself as a monetization perspective. We are a section, Digital India Bhashini division is a Section 8 company, so we will always be, working on a mechanism of monetization which will sustain our cost. But from a perspective of the benefit which it is giving, we are still studying and trying to figure out as what could be the ideal way of monetizing the assets which has been created, mostly as a service, because that's the way it is there, and also to ensure that it is continuously upgraded and made kept current. The another aspect which we know we where Bhashini would be investing as a cost is to get the Indian vocabulary into the system. So Indian vocabulary, as I said, we already did the train, we all have already done the station, we have already done the panchayats, and there are next level of panchayats, which is actually the villages. There are names, there are many other things which are there in the vocab, which actually the needs to get digitized and brought to the system so that it actually becomes whole encompassing. And when it becomes whole encompassing, the inclusivity and the benefits of that will be realized, and we hope to see that we are able to monetize as well as keep the service still inclusive, affordable, accurate. That's one of the tasks which we have, that we cannot we need to own up the translation and the outcomes which we are trying to give, and also serve as a torchbearer to this industry. The reason why government is creating this technology is to show the way. Please be 100% accurate. Please cover the languages, all the languages which are there in India. Please go to the use cases deep, so that you have a textbook in regional language, but you go to fill up the fees, you still have to go to a portal which is in English. That doesn't make sense. So you do everything, go deep into the use cases, and remain affordable. These are the four guiding principles which Bhashini will be a torchbearer in the industry to come forward, and we would encourage industry to actually create those solutions, create alternate models, but follow these principles: accuracy, inclusivity, deep use cases, and of course, be affordable.
Indeed. Thank you, Amitav and Aditya, for taking the time out to share your deep insights and perspectives. Thank you so much for telling us how Bhashin is developing innovative AI driven solutions to enhance citizens' engagement and provide solutions across industries, and also how the strategic partnership between Deloitte and Bhashini will tap into India's multilingual diversity, foster innovation and inclusive growth, and safeguard its rich linguistic and cultural heritage. We look forward to listening more of this at the Ārohaṇa conference here in Delhi. Thank you so much, both of you.